The contract arrived on a freezing Tuesday morning, hidden between floral invoices and champagne confirmations like a loaded gun wrapped in silk. Vivian Ashford almost ignored it. For over a decade, she'd been the most exclusive wedding architect in Manhattan, the woman billionaires hired when they wanted their love story to feel immortal. Then came the envelope. No names, no couple photos, just one sentence: plan the most breathtaking wedding New York has ever seen. Budget unlimited. The next morning, the client arrived. Damiano Moretti, the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast. He walked into her office wearing danger like expensive cologne, dark eyes carrying secrets, and said 5 words that changed everything. You're planning your own wedding. She didn't understand yet, but she would, and by then it would be too late to run. If you want to see how far love can bend before it breaks, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Vivian Ashford sat behind her desk at exactly 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that smelled like roses and felt like the edge of something she couldn't name yet. Her office overlooked Midtown Manhattan through floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more than most people's weddings. Ivory roses sat arranged in crystal vases across every surface. Fabric swatches hung organized by season and emotion. Candle samples lined the shelves like little prayers to perfection. Everything in this room existed to prove one thing: Vivian Ashford controlled chaos for a living. She was damn good at it. 12 years building other people's love stories. 12 years turning raw emotion into timed perfection. 12 years making sure brides walked down aisles toward futures they believed would last forever. Vivian stopped believing in forever when she was 28. Now she just sold it. Her assistant Maya knocked twice before entering, carrying the morning's mail stacked neat and color-coded. Bills in one pile, vendor contracts in another, client inquiries sorted by deposit size. Normal Tuesday, Maya said, dropping everything on the desk. Except this one. She held up a cream envelope that didn't match anything else in the stack. No return address, no logo. Just Vivian's name typed across the front in letters that looked expensive and vaguely threatening. Probably another billionaire who thinks unlimited budget makes up for no taste, Vivian muttered, reaching for her letter opener. Maya laughed. You say that like you don't take their money anyway. I take everyone's money. Doesn't mean I have to like them. She sliced the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Thick, textured. The kind of stationery people used when they wanted you to remember holding it. No greeting, no introduction. Just one sentence typed across the center. Plan the most breathtaking wedding New York has ever seen. Budget unlimited. Beneath it, handwritten in black ink, wire transfer confirmation attached. Consider this your retainer. Vivian flipped the page over. Her breath caught. The number staring back at her had enough zeros to keep her company alive for 3 years. Maybe 4 if she was careful. Jesus, Maya whispered, leaning over her shoulder. Is that real? Vivian pulled up her banking app with shaking fingers. The transfer had already cleared. $2 million sitting in her business account like it had always belonged there. Who sends $2 million without even meeting first? Maya asked. Vivian stared at the paper, her pulse doing something uncomfortable behind her ribs. No couple photos. No family details. No bride obsessing over Pinterest boards or grooms pretending to care about napkin folds. Just money and a single demand. Someone who doesn't want questions, Vivian said quietly. So what do you do? Vivian looked at the number again. Thought about the 3 vendor payments due next week. The office lease coming up for renewal. The tax bill she'd been ignoring because she didn't have enough in savings to cover it yet. She folded the paper and slid it into her desk drawer. I take the meeting. Gim. The client arrived at exactly 9 a.m. the next morning. Vivian heard him before she saw him. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets. The kind of walking that didn't ask permission. Maya appeared in the doorway, looking pale. There are 4 men outside, she whispered. Big ones. They're not sitting down. Did they give you a name? The one in front just said you're expecting him. Vivian stood slowly, smoothing her black pencil skirt. She'd chosen the outfit carefully this morning. Professional. controlled. The kind of armor that said I've seen wealth before and it doesn't impress me. Send him in. Maya hesitated. All of them? Just the client. The door opened 30 seconds later. Damiano Moretti walked into her office like he owned every room he entered and didn't need to prove it. Charcoal suit, no tie. Dark hair swept back in a way that suggested he'd stopped caring about looking perfect years ago, and somehow looked better for it. Tattoos disappeared beneath his collar. Dark ink she couldn't quite make out, but knew meant something violent. His eyes were the worst part. Calm. Unreadable. The kind of dark brown that didn't blink first. Vivian had planned weddings for tech billionaires, oil heirs, and European royalty. She'd sat across from men who owned islands and women who collected art worth more than small countries. None of them had ever made her office feel smaller just by standing in it. Ms. Ashford, his voice was low, controlled, with just enough gravel to remind you he didn't ask for things twice. Mr. Moretti, his eyebrow lifted slightly. You know who I am. I know your reputation. And you took the meeting anyway. You sent $2 million. I'm a wedding planner, not a saint. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or respect. He moved to the chair across from her desk and sat without being invited. The motion was smooth, controlled, the way dangerous men moved when they knew no one would stop them. Vivian sat down slowly, keeping her spine straight. I assume you're here to discuss wedding details, she said. Eventually. I don't work with eventually. I work with timelines, budgets, and concrete plans. Good. So do I. Silence filled the space between them. Outside, Manhattan hummed through the windows. Cars honked. People shouted. The city moved at its usual brutal pace. Inside this office, time felt suspended. When's the wedding? Vivian asked. 6 months. That's aggressive for something you're calling breathtaking. I didn't say it would be easy. I said budget was unlimited. Money doesn't solve timeline problems. It solves most problems. Vivian leaned forward slightly. Not in my world. You want breathtaking in 6 months? I need details. Venue preferences, guest count, color palette, theme. Who's the bride? Damiano's expression didn't change. You'll meet her eventually. Eventually isn't good enough. I need her involved in every decision, or this doesn't work. She trusts my judgment. I don't care what she trusts. I care about building something she'll actually want. She'll want whatever I choose. Vivian felt her jaw tighten. That's not how weddings work. It's how this one works. She sat back in her chair, studying him. Most grooms showed up to meetings looking uncomfortable, dragged along by fiancés who'd been planning their weddings since they were 7. They nodded at flower arrangements they couldn't tell apart and pretended to care about font choices. Damiano Moretti sat across from her looking like he'd personally designed every detail in his head before walking through her door. Why me? Vivian asked quietly. You're the best. There are other planners in Manhattan. None that matter? Flattery doesn't get you special treatment. I'm not flattering you, I'm stating a fact. He leaned forward slightly. You built a reputation for making impossible weddings happen. You've coordinated events for people who don't trust anyone. You keep secrets, you solve problems, and you don't ask questions you don't need answered. Vivian's pulse kicked. You researched me. I research everyone I work with. This isn't work, it's a wedding. For me, it's the same thing. She held his gaze, refusing to look away first. What else do you know about me? Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today. Vivian felt something cold slide down her spine. He knew things. She could feel it in the way he watched her, not like a client, like someone who'd already read the file. I need to meet the bride, she said firmly, non-negotiable. You will, when the time is right. The time is right now. No, it isn't. Vivian stood abruptly. Then we're done here. I don't plan weddings blind. Take your $2 million and find someone else. Damiano didn't move. He just looked at her with those calm, unreadable eyes that made her want to throw something. Sit down, Ms. Ashford. Excuse me? I'm not here to waste your time. Sit down and let me explain how this works. I know how weddings work. Not weddings. This. The word landed heavy between them. Vivian stayed standing, hands pressed flat against her desk. You have 60 seconds to convince me not to walk out of this meeting. Damiano tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a problem he was solving in real time. You don't trust love anymore, he said quietly. You stopped believing in it 12 years ago, when your fiancé left you 3 days before your wedding. You built this business because planning other people's happiness was easier than facing your own. You're good at what you do because you don't let emotion cloud your judgment. But lately, you've been wondering if that makes you empty or just smart. Vivian's breath stopped. The room tilted. Everything he just said was true. Every word. Private things she'd never told anyone except her therapist and Maya during one very drunk night 4 years ago. How do you know that? She whispered. I told you. I research everyone I work with. That's not research. That's invasion. Call it whatever you want. It doesn't change the fact that I'm right. Vivian's hands were shaking now. She sat down slowly, legs suddenly unsteady. What do you want from me? A wedding. Bullshit. You don't send $2 million and dig through someone's trauma just for flowers and music. Damiano leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered by her anger. You're right. I want more than a wedding. What? I want you to build something perfect, something that feels real even when it isn't, something people will remember for the rest of their lives. Why? Because I need to prove something. To who? To myself. Silence. Vivian stared at him, heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted out. I don't understand. You will, but only if you take the job. She wanted to say no, wanted to stand up, hand back the money, and tell him to get the hell out of her office. But she didn't, because buried beneath the fear and anger was something worse. Curiosity. If I do this, Vivian said slowly, I'm in control, complete control. You don't override my decisions. You don't question my process. And you introduce me to the bride within 2 weeks, or I walk. Agreed. I want everything in writing. Done. And I want to know why you really chose me. Damiano stood, buttoning his suit jacket in one smooth motion. You'll figure that out on your own. He walked toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. First meeting is Friday, 7 p.m. I'll send you the address. What kind of meeting? Venue scouting. I usually bring assistants to those. Not this time. He opened the door. Vivian's voice stopped him before he stepped through. Moretti. He glanced back. If you're lying to me about any of this, I'll burn your wedding to the ground and make sure everyone knows it was your fault. Damiano's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm counting on it. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut. Vivian sat alone in her office, surrounded by roses and fabric swatches and the lingering scent of expensive cologne that smelled like danger. Her hands were still shaking. She pulled out her phone and typed a single message to Maya. Run a full background check on Damiano Moretti. I want everything. The response came back 30 seconds later. Already did. You're not going to like it. Vivian stared at her screen. Then she opened her desk drawer, pulled out the cream envelope, and read the sentence again. Plan the most breathtaking wedding New York has ever seen. She had a terrible feeling she'd just agreed to something that had nothing to do with weddings at all. What? Friday arrived cold and clear. Vivian spent 3 days researching Damiano Moretti and regretting every search result. Owner of luxury hotels across the East Coast, shipping companies, nightclubs that operated just legal enough to avoid shutdown. Everything legitimate on paper. Everything rumored to be fronts for something darker underneath. The articles never said mafia outright. They danced around it with words like alleged and under investigation and no charges filed. But Vivian knew how to read between lines. Damiano Moretti ran an empire built on fear, favors, and violence dressed up in expensive suits. And she'd just agreed to plan his wedding. The address he sent led to a building in Tribeca she'd never noticed before. Unmarked door. No signs. Just a number painted in gold above black steel. Vivian arrived at 6:58 p.m. wearing a charcoal coat and boots built for walking, not impressing. She'd learned early in her career that venue scouting meant climbing stairs, inspecting kitchens, and checking sight lines. Heels were a trap. She knocked once. The door opened immediately. A man the size of a refrigerator stood in the entrance. No expression, no greeting. Ms. Ashford? Yes. He stepped aside. The hallway beyond was lit with amber light that made everything look like old money and older secrets. Vivian walked forward slowly, heels clicking against marble floors. Another door at the end of the hall. She pushed it open. The space beyond stole her breath. A private rooftop lounge stretched before her, enclosed in glass that overlooked Manhattan like a secret the city kept for itself. The Brooklyn Bridge glowed in the distance. The East River reflected lights that looked like fallen stars. Damiano stood near the windows, hands in his pockets, watching the city like he owned it. "You're early," he said without turning around. "I'm on time. You're just used to people being late." He glanced back and something close to amusement touched his expression. "Fair." Vivian walked further into the space, taking in the details. The room was stunning. High ceilings, exposed brick on one wall, modern fixtures that didn't try too hard. Space for maybe 100 guests if they were packed, 60 if you wanted them comfortable. "This is yours?" she asked. "One of mine. You own a lot of things?" "I own things worth owning." Vivian moved to the windows, looking out at the skyline burning gold in the distance. "It's beautiful." "I know." She turned to face him. "Is this where you want the wedding?" "Maybe. Depends." "On what?" "On whether you think it works." Vivian walked the perimeter slowly, cataloging everything. Sightlines, lighting, acoustics, flow. "It works," she admitted, "but it's not breathtaking yet." "What would make it breathtaking?" She stopped near the eastern windows where the city spread out like a promise. "Timing. If you held the ceremony at sunset, right when the light hits the bridge and the buildings turn gold, it would feel like the whole city was watching." "What else?" "Flowers. Not arrangements, living installations. Something that makes the space feel like it's growing instead of decorated." "Keep going." Vivian felt herself slipping into the rhythm she knew, the part of her brain that turned empty rooms into memory. Music, live, string quartet during the ceremony, jazz trio after, something that feels like the city itself is singing. Damiano stepped closer, hands still in his pockets. "What about color?" "White and gold, clean, classic, nothing competing with the skyline. Predictable." Vivian's jaw tightened. "You asked for breathtaking. Breathtaking doesn't mean complicated." "I didn't say I disagreed, I said it was predictable." "You hired me for my expertise. If you want something different, tell me what the bride actually wants." Damiano's expression shifted. Something unreadable passed behind his eyes. "She wants something that feels real." "Real how?" "Like it matters." Vivian stared at him. "Every wedding matters." "No, every wedding is expensive. Most of them don't matter." The honesty surprised her. "Then why bother?" "Because this one will." Silence filled the space. Vivian turned back to the windows, watching lights blink on across the river. "I still need to meet her. Soon. That's what you said Monday. And I meant it. Moretti. Damiano." She blinked. "What?" "Call me Damiano. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. No point pretending this is formal." Vivian felt something uncomfortable shift in her chest. "That doesn't change the fact that I need access to the bride." "You'll have it when the time is right." "Stop saying that. Stop pushing." They stood 5 feet apart in a room full of glass and gold light, staring at each other like opponents who hadn't figured out the rules yet. "Why are you really doing this?" Vivian asked quietly. "I told you." "No, you gave me a line. I want the truth." Damiano's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his controlled exterior. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." He studied her for a long moment. Then he walked to a table near the bar and picked up a black leather folder. "Open it." Vivian took the folder carefully, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't name. Inside were design sketches, floor plans, lighting concepts, music selections, her favorite lighting concepts, design ideas she'd filed away years ago because no client ever wanted them. "How do you have these?" she whispered. "I told you. I research everyone I work with." "This isn't research. This is..." She stopped, because she'd just noticed the date written in the corner of one sketch, 13 years ago, before her business, before her reputation, before the wedding that never happened. These were designs from her personal archive, concepts she'd created for herself. For the wedding she'd planned with a man who left her standing in a bridal suite holding a bouquet and wondering what she'd done wrong. Vivian's hands started shaking. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Yes. Damiano stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that she could smell expensive cologne and something darker underneath. I needed to know what perfection looked like to you. Why? Because the bride deserves it. Vivian looked up at him, pulse racing, brain screaming warnings her body refused to hear. Who is she? Damiano's dark eyes held hers, and for the first time since walking into her office, something raw and real broke through his controlled exterior. Someone who stopped believing she deserved beautiful things a long time ago. The words hit like a punch. Vivian stepped back, folder clutched against her chest. I need to go. Vivian, don't. Just don't. She turned and walked toward the door on legs that didn't feel steady. Damiano's voice stopped her before she reached the exit. Next meeting is Tuesday. Same time. Bring your floral concepts. She didn't turn around. I'll think about it. No, you won't. You'll show up because you need to know how this ends. Vivian's hand tightened on the door handle. He was right. She hated that he was right. She walked out without another word down the amber-lit hallway, past the silent bodyguard, and into the freezing Tribeca night. Her phone buzzed before she made it to the subway. A text from an unknown number. You forgot this. Attached was a photo of the black leather folder still sitting on the table. Then another message. I'll keep it safe until Tuesday. Vivian stared at her screen, breath fogging in the cold air. She should block the number. Should return the $2 million. Should walk away from whatever psychological game Damiano Moretti was playing. Instead, she typed one word. Fine. His response came immediately. Good. Wear something comfortable. We're going to Brooklyn. Vivian shoved her phone in her pocket and headed underground. Somewhere behind her, she knew he was still standing in that glass room overlooking the city, watching her disappear. And the terrifying part wasn't that he knew too much. It was that she wanted to know why. Thought. Tuesday came too fast. Vivian spent the weekend buried in work, telling herself the knot in her stomach was stress and not anticipation. She pulled every floral concept she'd ever designed, sketched new ones, crossed them out, started over. By Monday night, her office looked like a botanical garden had exploded. Maya stood in the doorway holding coffee and wearing concern. You're spiraling. I'm working. You're obsessing. Vivian threw a crumpled sketch at her. Maya caught it, unfolded it, and studied the design. This is gorgeous. Why'd you throw it out? It's too obvious. It's peonies and ranunculus. That's classic, not obvious. Vivian snatched the paper back. He'll think it's predictable. Who cares what he thinks? I care what every client thinks. This one's different. No, he's not. Maya gave her a look that said, we both know you're lying. Fine, he's different. Happy? Not even a little. You've planned weddings for murderers. Alleged murderers. And you never once lost sleep over floral arrangements. What's going on? Vivian sat down heavily behind her desk. He has my old designs, Maya, the ones I made for myself. Before everything fell apart. How? I don't know. That's creepy. I know. So why are you still taking meetings? Vivian looked at the sketches scattered across her desk. Years of work, years of building other people's dreams because hers had died in a hotel room surrounded by white roses and unanswered calls. Because I need to know what he wants. Or maybe you just need to know why he wants it from you. The truth landed heavy between them. Vivian didn't answer. Maya set the coffee down and walked to the door. Be careful, Viv. Men like Damiano Moretti don't hire wedding planners. They hire weapons. I'm not a weapon. Maya paused in the doorway. Maybe that's why he picked you. Then she was gone. Vivian sat alone in her office, surrounded by flowers and sketches, and the uncomfortable feeling that she'd already lost control of something she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed at exactly 6 p.m. Car's waiting downstairs. Driver knows where to go. She grabbed her coat, the peony sketch she'd thrown away earlier, and walked out before she could change her mind. The car was black, expensive, and driven by a man who didn't make conversation. They crossed the Brooklyn Bridge as the sun started setting, turning the East River into liquid gold. The driver pulled up to an old warehouse near the waterfront. Renovated, expensive. The kind of building people bought when they wanted privacy and didn't mind paying for it. Damiano waited outside, leaning against the brick like he had all the time in the world. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look less like a mafia boss and more like someone dangerous trying to pretend he wasn't. Vivian climbed out of the car, sketch folder tucked under one arm. "Brooklyn," she said. "You promised Brooklyn." "I keep my promises." "Is this the venue?" "Part of it." He pushed off the wall and started walking. Vivian followed, boots crunching on gravel. They climbed 3 flights of stairs to a rooftop that opened onto the Manhattan skyline like a secret. Vivian stopped breathing. The view was perfect. The city burned gold across the water. The bridge stretched between them like a promise. The sky was starting to bruise purple at the edges. 5 p.m., Damiano said quietly. "When the light hits the buildings just right." Vivian turned to stare at him. Those were her words. From the sketch he'd stolen. From the wedding she'd designed for herself 13 years ago. Brooklyn rooftop, 5 p.m. When Manhattan turns gold. "You remembered," she whispered. "I remember everything that matters." Her pulse kicked. She walked to the edge of the rooftop, gripping the railing, trying to steady herself. "Why are you doing this?" "I told you." "The truth, Damiano, not another line." He moved beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the skyline. "Because 12 years ago, you designed the perfect wedding for yourself and never got to see it, and I think you deserve to know what it looks like when it's real." Vivian's breath caught. "That's not your job." "Maybe not, but it's happening anyway." She turned to face him fully, anger and confusion and something terrifying tangled in her chest. "I don't even know who the bride is." Damiano's dark eyes finally met hers, and she saw it. The truth he'd been carrying since the moment he walked into her office. "Yes, you do." The world tilted. Vivian shook her head slowly, refusing to understand what he was saying even though her brain was screaming it. "No." "Yes." "That's not—" "It's exactly what this is." Her hands started shaking. "You're insane." "Probably." "This isn't real." "Not yet. But it will be." Vivian backed away from him, heart slamming against her ribs. "I'm not marrying you." "I haven't asked yet." "You never will." "We'll see." She turned and walked toward the stairs, needing air, needing space, needing anything except this rooftop and this man and the impossible thing he was suggesting. Damiano's voice followed her. "I'll see you Friday, Vivian. Same time. Bring the peonies." She didn't stop walking, didn't turn around, just kept moving until she hit the street and the cold Brooklyn air and the sound of traffic that felt normal and safe. Her phone buzzed 3 blocks later. "You left the sketch." Then, "I'll add it to the folder." Vivian stopped walking, stood on a corner in Brooklyn with Manhattan burning gold across the water and her entire world cracking open. She should run, should quit, should return every dollar and never think about Damiano Moretti again. Instead, she opened her phone and typed, "What's Friday?" His response came immediately. "Cake tasting. The bride needs to approve flavors." Vivian stared at her screen, then typed the most dangerous word she'd ever sent. "Fine." She shoved her phone in her pocket and kept walking. Behind her, across the river, she knew Damiano was still standing on that rooftop, watching her leave, waiting for her to come back. And the worst part was knowing she would. Friday's cake tasting happened in a private kitchen on the Upper East Side that smelled like vanilla and felt like a trap. Vivian arrived 15 minutes late on purpose, carrying her portfolio like a shield and wearing the kind of professional mask she'd perfected over 12 years of pretending other people's happiness didn't make her chest ache. Damiano was already there, standing near a marble counter covered in small white plates. Each one held a different cake sample, arranged like evidence in a case she didn't want to solve. He looked up when she entered. No bodyguards this time, just him in a black button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, exposing more of those dark tattoos she'd only glimpsed before. They wrapped around his wrists like chains, disappearing up his arms in patterns that probably meant violence in some language she didn't speak. "You're late," he said. "I got stuck in traffic." "You took the subway." Vivian stopped walking. Are you tracking me? I'm observing patterns. You always take the subway. That's creepy. That's thorough. She dropped her portfolio on the counter with more force than necessary. Where's the pastry chef? Left 10 minutes ago. Told her we'd handle the tasting ourselves. That's not how this works. It is today. Vivian's jaw tightened. She looked at the cake samples lined up like tiny landmines. Chocolate, vanilla, red velvet, lemon, champagne, almond. Each one perfect. Each one probably expensive. Each one making this whole insane situation feel more real than it had any right to. I'm not doing this, she said quietly. You already agreed. I agreed to plan a wedding, not participate in whatever psychological game you're playing. Damiano picked up a fork, stabbed a piece of chocolate cake, and held it out to her. Taste it. No. It's cake, Vivian, not poison. I know what it is. Then taste it. She stared at the fork suspended between them, at his steady hand, at the way he watched her like he was waiting for something specific to break. Why are you doing this? She asked, hating how her voice shook. Because the bride needs to approve the flavors. Stop calling me that. I didn't call you anything. The words hung in the air like smoke. Vivian grabbed the fork from his hand and shoved the cake in her mouth just to prove she could. It tasted like expensive cocoa and her own stupid pride. It's good, she said flatly. What else? It's chocolate. Dark. Belgian probably. 70% cacao paired with espresso buttercream. Damiano's mouth curved slightly. See? You're good at this. I'm good at my job. That doesn't mean I'm your bride. Not yet. Vivian slammed the fork down. Stop saying that. Why? It's true. It's insane. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She turned away from him, hands gripping the counter edge, trying to breathe through the pressure building in her chest. You don't even know me. I know you take the subway because you hate feeling trapped in cars. I know you drink black coffee every morning at exactly 7:15. I know you haven't been on a date in 3 years because you tell yourself you're too busy, but really you're just scared. Vivian spun around. You have no right. I know you designed the perfect wedding for yourself when you were 26 and spent the next 12 years helping other people live the dream that died for you. Her breath stopped. I know you blame yourself for what he did, even though it wasn't your fault. Shut up. I know you're terrified that if you let yourself feel anything real again, it'll destroy you the same way it did before. I said, shut up. Damiano set the fork down carefully and stepped closer. Not touching her. Just close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him like a furnace. I know all of that, he said quietly, and I still chose you. Vivian's hands were shaking now, full tremors she couldn't control. Why? Because you're the only person I've ever met who understands that beautiful things can break you. The honesty in his voice hit harder than any manipulation could have. Vivian looked up at him, this dangerous man standing in a kitchen full of cake samples, looking at her like she was the only unsolvable problem he'd ever encountered. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand exactly what I'm asking, and I'm asking anyway. Silence filled the kitchen. Outside, the city moved at its brutal Friday pace. People rushing home. People rushing out. Everyone moving forward while Vivian stood frozen in a moment she couldn't name. Taste the vanilla, Damiano said softly. What? The vanilla. Second from the left. Taste it. I don't... Please. The word broke something in her. She'd heard Damiano Moretti give orders. Heard him make statements. Heard him control rooms with nothing but his voice. She'd never heard him say please. Vivian picked up a clean fork with shaking hands and cut into the vanilla cake. It was perfect. Light, delicate. With hints of Madagascar vanilla and honey that tasted like summer and things she'd forgotten how to want. It's beautiful, she admitted quietly. What would you pair it with? Champagne buttercream, fresh berries between the layers. Maybe edible flowers if we're feeling brave. We? She looked up sharply. Damiano was watching her with something that looked like satisfaction. I meant the hypothetical bride, Vivian said quickly. No, you didn't. Yes, You said we because for 30 seconds you forgot to be scared and just let yourself imagine what you'd actually want. Vivian set the fork down, hands still trembling. This isn't fair. I never promised fair. I promised breathtaking. I'm not marrying you, Damiano. Then just plan the wedding. For who? For yourself. Pretend it's real. Build everything you never got to have. And when it's done, if you still want to walk away, I won't stop you. Vivian stared at him, pulse hammering. That's the deal? That's the deal. And if I say yes to this insane plan, you'll stop manipulating me? Something dark flickered across his expression. I'll try. That's not good enough. It's the best I can offer. Vivian turned away, looking at the cake samples spread across the counter like choices she didn't know how to make. Every rational part of her brain screamed to run, but the part that had spent 12 years building other people's dreams while her own collected dust in a drawer whispered something different. What if... Fine, she said quietly. Damiano went very still behind her. Fine? I'll plan the wedding, my wedding, the one I never got to have, but that's all this is, design work, a creative exercise. Understood. And when it's over, we go back to being strangers. If that's what you want? Vivian turned to face him, needing him to see she meant every word. It is. Damiano's dark eyes held hers for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Vanilla cake with champagne buttercream and fresh berries. I'll tell the pastry chef. He picked up his phone and typed something quickly. Vivian watched him, this man who'd somehow turned her entire world sideways in the span of 2 weeks, and wondered if she'd just made the smartest decision of her life or the most dangerous. Next meeting is Monday, Damiano said, pocketing his phone. We need to finalize the guest list. There's no guest list. This isn't real. It needs to feel real or it doesn't work. Work for what? He looked at her with those unreadable eyes that made her want to scream. You'll see. Then he walked past her toward the door, close enough that his shoulder almost brushed hers. He paused in the doorway. The vanilla was the right choice, he said quietly. How do you know? Because it's what you chose for yourself 13 years ago, before anyone told you it wasn't enough. He left before she could respond. Vivian stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by half-eaten cake samples, and the uncomfortable knowledge that Damiano Moretti knew her better than anyone had in over a decade. Her phone buzzed, a text from Maya. Please tell me you didn't agree to marry the mobster. Vivian stared at her screen, then typed back. I agreed to plan a wedding, that's all. Maya's response came immediately. That's what they all say. Vivian shoved her phone in her pocket and left before the truth of that statement could sink in too deep. The guest list meeting happened in Damiano's penthouse office on Monday night. Vivian had expected another private venue, another carefully staged location designed to make her feel off balance. Instead, the address led to a building overlooking Central Park, with doormen who looked like they moonlighted as bodyguards and elevators that required key cards to access the top floor. The doors opened directly into Damiano's space, floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood, leather furniture that looked expensive and felt like sitting in controlled danger. Everything was clean, minimalist, perfect, except for the wall of photographs. Vivian stopped in the entryway, staring. Black and white images covered the entire eastern wall, candid shots of people laughing, dancing, crying. Wedding photos. All of them. These are yours? She asked quietly. Damiano appeared from a hallway to the left, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. Some of them. Why? Because I wanted to understand what you see when you look at love. He handed her a glass. Vivian took it automatically, still staring at the wall. Every photo showed a moment she'd captured over the years. Stolen glances between couples, first dances, tearful vows, the private seconds between chaos when people forgot the cameras existed and just felt things. How did you get these? You post them on your website. I post 5 photos per wedding. There are hundreds here. Damiano moved to stand beside her, glass in hand, eyes on the wall. I had someone retrieve the full archives from your photographer partners. That's obsessive, I know. Vivian turned to look at him, whiskey forgotten. Why would you do this? Because I needed to see what matters to you when no one's performing. She looked back at the wall. He was right. Every photo showed the real moments, The ones between the choreographed shots, the seconds when people thought no one was watching and let themselves be vulnerable. "These aren't mine," she said quietly. "I just planned the weddings. The photographers captured them." "But you told them what to look for. You taught them to find the truth between the poses." Vivian's chest tightened. "You're reading too much into this." "Am I?" She took a long drink of whiskey, needing something to do with her hands. It was good. Expensive. The kind that burned going down and made everything feel sharper. "The guest list," she said firmly. "That's why I'm here." "Right." Damiano moved to his desk and pulled out a folder. Vivian followed, heels clicking on hardwood. He opened the folder to reveal a single blank page with 2 words written at the top. Guest list. Nothing else. "This is a joke," Vivian said. "No. It's a question." "What question?" Damiano looked at her steadily. "If you were getting married for real, who would you invite?" Vivian's breath caught. "That's not fair. It's the assignment. There is no assignment. This isn't real." "Then it should be easy to answer." She set her whiskey down hard enough to make it splash. "Fine. No one." "No one." "That's right. You wouldn't invite anyone to your own wedding?" "Why would I? The people who mattered are gone. Everyone else is just business contacts and acquaintances who'd show up for the open bar." Damiano studied her for a long moment. "What about Maya?" Vivian froze. "Leave her out of this. She's your friend. She's my assistant. She's the only person you trust." "I said leave her out of this." Damiano's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "You're scared to let her see you want something." "I'm not scared. I'm practical." "You're terrified that if you admit you want this, even hypothetically, it'll make the fact that you don't have it hurt worse." Vivian grabbed her bag off the desk. "I'm leaving." "Why?" "Because you don't get to psychoanalyze me in exchange for wedding planning." "I'm not psychoanalyzing, I'm observing." "Same thing." She turned toward the elevator. Damiano's voice stopped her 3 steps from the door. "I'd invite 73 people." Vivian paused, but didn't turn around. "What?" "If this were my real wedding, I'd invite 73 people, family, business partners, people who've kept my secrets, people who've earned the right to see me vulnerable." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me to stop manipulating you. So I'm being honest instead." Vivian turned slowly. Damiano stood beside his desk, whiskey in hand, looking at her like this was the most normal conversation in the world. "This is your real wedding," she said quietly. "Not yet." "Then whose is it?" He took a slow drink, eyes never leaving hers. "Ours." The word landed like a gunshot. Vivian shook her head. "No." "Eventually." "Never." "We'll see." She walked back to the desk, anger overriding fear. "You can't just decide we're getting married because you plan some elaborate psychological operation. That's not how relationships work. I'm not deciding anything. I'm building something and waiting to see if you choose it." "I won't." "Maybe, but you're still here." Vivian opened her mouth to argue and realized she had no defense. He was right. She could have walked away after the first meeting, could have returned the money, could have blocked his number and never looked back. Instead, she'd shown up to every meeting, tasted the cake, approved the venue, and spent the last week designing floral arrangements for a wedding that didn't exist. "I hate you," she whispered. Damiano's expression softened slightly. "No, you don't. You hate that I'm right." "Same thing." He moved around the desk, closer but not quite touching. "Tell me one person you'd invite, just one, and I'll drop it for tonight." Vivian stared at him, pulse racing. "Why does this matter?" "Because if you can't imagine anyone caring enough to show up, then you don't believe you deserve to be celebrated, and that's the real problem we're solving." The truth of it hit her like cold water. "Maya," she said finally, voice barely audible. "I'd invite Maya." Damiano nodded once. Then he picked up a pen and wrote her name on the guest list. Maya Chen, maid of honor. Vivian's throat tightened. "I didn't say maid of honor. Who else would it be?" "This isn't real, I know. You keep saying that." He set the pen down and looked at her. "But humor me. If it were real, who else?" Vivian closed her eyes, hating herself for playing along. My college roommate, Sarah. We haven't talked in years, but she'd come if I asked. Damiano wrote it down. Who else? My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. No relation to Maya. She's 83 and makes the best dumplings in Manhattan. He added her to the list. Keep going. And suddenly, like a dam breaking, Vivian couldn't stop. Names poured out of her, people she'd lost touch with. Friends from before the broken engagement who'd drifted away when she'd stopped returning calls. Former clients who'd sent her holiday cards for years. People who mattered. People she'd convinced herself didn't care. Damiano wrote down every single name without comment, just letting her talk until the page was half full and her voice finally broke. That's enough, she whispered. That's 37 people. So you're not as alone as you think you are. Vivian looked at the list, vision blurring. All those names, all those people she'd cut out of her life because letting them in felt too dangerous. Why are you doing this? She asked, tears threatening to spill over. Damiano set the pen down carefully. Because 12 years ago, someone made you believe you weren't worth celebrating. And I'm going to prove him wrong. The tears fell before she could stop them. Vivian turned away quickly, wiping her face, furious at herself for crying in front of this man who already had too much power over her. I need to go. Vivian, I'll email you the final floral designs tomorrow. Stay. The word was soft, not a command, a request. She shook her head without turning around. I can't. Why not? Because if I stay, I'll start believing this is real. And when it ends, it'll break me worse than before. Silence filled the penthouse. Then Damiano's voice, quiet and steady. What if it doesn't end? Vivian's breath caught. She forced herself to turn around to meet his eyes, to say the thing that terrified her most. Everything ends, especially the beautiful things. Damiano stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until they were barely a foot apart. Not if you build them strong enough. Nothing's that strong. We could be? Vivian shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you better than anyone has in 12 years. That's not, I know you're terrified. I know you think wanting this makes you weak. I know you've spent over a decade convincing yourself that being alone is safer than being loved. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His palm cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear. I know all of that, he said quietly, and I'm still here. Vivian closed her eyes, leaning into his touch before she could stop herself. It felt too good, too warm, too real. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. You're going to hurt me. Maybe. Or maybe I'll prove you wrong. She opened her eyes and found him looking at her like she was the only unsolved equation that mattered. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Neither do I. You run a criminal empire. You plan everything. Not this. This terrifies me just as much as it terrifies you. The confession surprised her. You're not scared of anything. I'm scared of losing you before I've even had you. Vivian's breath shuddered. You can't lose what you never had. Watch me. Then he kissed her. Soft at first, gentle, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer like he was oxygen, and she'd been drowning for years. The kiss turned desperate. Damiano's other hand found her waist, fingers pressing into her hip, like he needed to confirm she was real. Vivian made a sound she'd never heard herself make before, something between a gasp and a surrender. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, both of them shaking. Tell me to stop, Damiano whispered against her mouth. I can't. Tell me this is a mistake. It is. Then why aren't you leaving? Vivian opened her eyes and found him staring at her with raw, unguarded want. Because I'm tired of being alone. The honesty cracked something open between them. Damiano kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her surrender. Vivian let him. Let herself feel wanted. Let herself imagine, just for a moment, that this dangerous man could actually keep the promises his kiss was making. When they finally broke apart again, she was crying. Not from sadness, from the terrifying realization that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "I should go," she whispered. "Stay. Damiano, please, just tonight. Stay and let me prove this isn't what you think it is." Vivian looked at him through tears and saw something she'd never expected to see in a mafia boss's eyes. Fear. Raw, genuine fear that she'd walk away and take the possibility of them with her. "Just tonight," she heard herself say. "Just tonight," he agreed. It was a lie. They both knew it, but Vivian stayed anyway. Shut. She woke up at 3 a.m. on Damiano's couch, covered in a cashmere throw that smelled like expensive cologne and bad decisions. Damiano sat across from her in a leather chair, still awake, watching her like he was afraid she'd disappear if he blinked. "You didn't sleep," Vivian said, voice rough. "Couldn't." "Why?" "Because I kept thinking you'd wake up and run." She sat up slowly, gathering the throw around her shoulders. "I should have." "But you didn't." "Not yet." Damiano leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I need to tell you something." Vivian's stomach dropped. "What?" "My mother knows about you." The air left her lungs. "What?" "She found out I hired you, asked questions, put pieces together." "Damiano, she wants to meet you." Vivian stood abruptly, throwing blanket falling to the floor. "No, absolutely not." "Vivian, you said this was hypothetical, a creative exercise. Now you're telling me your mother, your mafia family mother, knows I exist?" "I didn't tell her anything specific, but she knows." Damiano stood, hands raised like he was calming a spooked animal. "She knows I hired a wedding planner. That's all." "That's enough." "She thinks it's for business, a cover for something else." "And when she finds out it's not?" Damiano went very still. "Then we deal with it." Vivian backed toward the elevator, heart hammering. "There is no we. I plan weddings. You run a criminal empire. Those worlds don't overlap." "They already do." "Then I'm out." She hit the elevator button. Damiano crossed the space between them in 3 strides. "Don't." "Give me one good reason." "Because I'm falling in love with you, and I can't do anything to stop it." The confession hit like a physical blow. Vivian stared at him, pulse racing, brain screaming warnings her heart refused to hear. "You don't love me. You love the idea of fixing something broken." "You're not broken." "Yes, I am." "Then so am I. And maybe that's the point." The elevator doors opened. Vivian stepped inside, hands shaking. Damiano moved to follow. She put her hand up, stopping him. "Don't." "Vivian, I need to think, alone." "How long?" "I don't know." His jaw tightened. "Will you come back?" Vivian looked at him, this dangerous man who'd somehow found every crack in her armor and learned to live inside them. "I don't know," she said honestly. The elevator doors started to close. Damiano's hand shot out, stopping them. "The wedding is in 4 months," he said quietly. "Whether you come back or not, I'm building it anyway. Your perfect day, everything you designed for yourself, it'll be ready when you are. And if I'm never ready, then I'll wait alone at an altar in Brooklyn at 5 p.m. and marry the memory of what could have been." The doors closed on his words. Vivian rode down 47 floors in silence, tears streaming down her face, knowing she'd just heard the most romantic and most devastating thing anyone had ever said to her. When she hit the lobby, her phone was already buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "Your mother called. She wants to meet at Russo's tomorrow at noon. You'll be there." Then another. "Bring the wedding planner. I want to see what my son's wasting his time on." Vivian stared at her screen, blood turning to ice. Damiano's mother. The queen behind the Moretti Empire. The woman who'd probably ordered violence Vivian couldn't even imagine. She looked up at the building, at the penthouse windows glowing 47 floors above, then typed one word back to Damiano. "Help." His response came immediately. "I'll be there. I promise." Vivian shoved her phone in her pocket and walked out into the freezing Manhattan night. Tomorrow, she'd face the reality of what loving Damiano Moretti actually meant. Tonight, she just needed to breathe. But when she made it 3 blocks and looked back, she could still see his building glowing against the skyline. And she knew, with terrifying certainty, that she was already too far gone to walk away. Rousseau sat on a corner in Little Italy like a throne wrapped in red velvet and old blood money. Vivian arrived at 11:47 a.m. wearing her best armor, black Armani suit, hair pulled into a knot tight enough to give her a headache, heels that clicked like weapons against pavement. Maya had tried to come with her. Vivian said no. Some wars you fought alone. The restaurant was closed for lunch, private party, which meant Damiano's mother had cleared the entire place just to make Vivian feel small. It was working. A man the size of a wall stood at the entrance. No greeting, just a single nod toward the back room. Vivian walked through the empty dining room, past tables set with white cloth and wine glasses that caught the light like tiny threats. Everything smelled like garlic, expensive wine, and power that didn't need to announce itself. The backroom door was already open. Isabella Moretti sat at the head of a long table like a queen holding court in enemy territory. She was smaller than Vivian expected, maybe 5'4" in heels, silver hair cut sharp at her shoulders, black dress that probably cost more than Vivian's car, rings on every finger that looked like they'd been worn during treaty signings and executions. Her eyes were the same dark brown as Damiano's, but where his carried danger wrapped in control, hers held something colder. Calculation. Ms. Ashford? Her voice was smooth, accented with something European Vivian couldn't place. Sit, not a request. Vivian sat across from her, spine straight, hands folded in her lap like she was interviewing for a job she didn't want. Mrs. Moretti. Isabella, we're going to be family soon. No need for formality. The words landed like a trap. I'm just planning a wedding, Vivian said carefully. Isabella smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Of course you are, and I'm just a concerned mother making sure my son isn't making a terrible mistake. Silence filled the space. A waiter appeared from nowhere, setting down 2 espressos in tiny white cups. Isabella lifted hers, took a delicate sip, and studied Vivian over the rim. You're prettier than I expected. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. Pretty girls are easy to manipulate. They're used to getting what they want with a smile and a batting of eyelashes. Vivian's jaw tightened. I don't manipulate anyone. No, you let my son manipulate you instead. He hired me to plan a wedding. He hired you to fall in love with him. The accusation hit like cold water. Vivian set her espresso down, untouched. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Isabella leaned back in her chair, rings catching the light. My son has never hired a wedding planner in his life. Suddenly he meets you, transfers $2 million, and starts taking meetings about flowers and cake like he's preparing for something that matters. It's a business arrangement. Business arrangements don't happen at 3 a.m. on penthouse couches. Vivian's blood went cold. You're having him followed. I protect what's mine. Damiano is mine. He's a grown man. He's the heir to an empire that took 3 generations to build, and you're a wedding planner with abandonment issues and a dead love life. The cruelty was surgical, precise, designed to hit exactly where it would hurt most. Vivian forced herself to breathe through the anger building in her chest. If you brought me here just to insult me, you wasted a trip. I brought you here to offer you a choice. What choice? Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out a cream envelope, the same kind Damiano had used to hire her. She slid it across the table. Vivian stared at it like it might explode. Open it. No. Open it, or I'll have someone open it for you. The threat wasn't subtle. Vivian picked up the envelope with shaking hands and tore it open. Inside was a check. $5 million, made out to Vivian Ashford. What is this? Your exit fee. Take it and disappear. Cancel the wedding. Tell my son you realize this was a mistake. Move to another city if you want. Start over somewhere he can't find you. Vivian looked up slowly. You're bribing me to leave him. I'm paying you to make a smart decision before you get hurt. I'm not taking this. Yes, you are, because the alternative is much worse. Something in Isabella's voice made Vivian's skin crawl. What alternative? Isabella took another sip of espresso, completely calm. Damiano is engaged? The words didn't make sense at first. Vivian's brain refused to process them. What? He's been engaged for 6 months. to Sofia Castellano, daughter of the Castellano family. It's a business arrangement that will merge two territories and end a conflict that's been bleeding resources for years. Vivian shook her head slowly. That's not possible. It's already done. The contracts are signed. The families have agreed. The wedding is scheduled for 8 months from now. Then why would he hire me? Because my son is a romantic fool who thinks he can have both. The empire and the love story, the alliance and the fairy tale. Vivian's chest felt like it was caving in. You're lying. Isabella pulled out her phone, typed something, and turned the screen toward Vivian. A photograph. Damiano in a tuxedo, standing beside a woman in a red dress. Beautiful. Young. Dark hair and darker eyes, smiling at the camera like she owned the world. The date stamp said 3 months ago. Engagement party, Isabella said calmly. Very private. Very exclusive. You weren't invited. Vivian stared at the photo, vision blurring. He told you what you wanted to hear. That's what men like Damiano do. They manipulate, they plan. They use people like chess pieces and convince them they're queens. I don't believe you. Then ask him yourself. The door behind Vivian opened. She turned. Damiano walked in wearing the same charcoal suit from their first meeting, face carefully blank. Their eyes met. Vivian saw the truth before he said a word. Guilt. Raw, undeniable guilt. It's true, she whispered. Vivian, you're engaged to someone else. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Damiano's jaw tightened. He looked at his mother, then back at Vivian. Can we talk about this alone? No, Isabella said firmly. She deserves to hear this with a witness. So there's no more manipulation, no more lies. Vivian stood on shaking legs. Tell me the truth. Right now. Are you engaged to Sofia Castellano? Damiano's silence was answer enough. Yes, he said finally. The word shattered something inside her. Vivian grabbed her bag, needing to leave before she fell apart in front of them. Vivian, wait. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't say another word. Let me explain. Explain what? That you used me? That everything you said was a lie? None of it was a lie? You're engaged to another woman. The words echoed off the walls. Damiano stepped toward her. Vivian backed away like he was toxic. The engagement is political, he said, voice tight. A merger. It means nothing. It means you lied to me. I didn't lie. You just what? Forgot to mention you already had a fiancé while you were kissing me and telling me you were falling in love? His face went pale. That wasn't, save it. I don't want to hear another word from your lying mouth. She turned toward the door. Isabella's voice stopped her. Take the check, Ms. Ashford. It's more than you'll ever make planning weddings for people who don't appreciate you. Vivian looked back at the envelope sitting on the table. $5 million. Enough to start over. Enough to disappear. Enough to pretend the last month never happened. She picked it up slowly. Damiano's expression crumbled. Vivian, please. I hope she makes you miserable, Vivian said quietly. I hope every single day of your arranged marriage feels like drowning. And I hope you think of me every time you look at her and remember what you destroyed. She walked out before he could respond, made it through the dining room, past the wall of a bodyguard, out onto the street where Manhattan hummed with normal people living normal lives that didn't involve mafia bosses and broken hearts. She made it 2 blocks before her legs gave out. Vivian sat down hard on a bench outside a bodega, check crumpled in her fist, and finally let herself cry. 12 years ago, her fiancé left her 3 days before their wedding. She'd survived that, built a life, built a business, built walls high enough to keep everyone out. Then Damiano Moretti walked into her office and dismantled everything, made her believe, made her hope, made her fall in love with the idea that maybe, just maybe, she deserved beautiful things. And it was all a lie. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damiano. Please let me explain. She deleted it without reading further. Another buzz. It's not what you think. Delete. I love you. Vivian stared at those 3 words until they blurred. Then she blocked his number and threw her phone in her bag before she could change her mind. The check was still crumpled in her hand. $5 million. Her exit fee. Her prize for being stupid enough to believe a criminal could love her. Vivian stood slowly, legs unsteady, and walked toward the nearest bank. She deposited the check at 1:47 p.m. The teller didn't ask questions, just processed the transaction with efficient politeness and handed her a receipt that said her account balance had 7 figures now. Vivian walked out of the bank feeling hollower than she'd ever felt in her life. Her office was quiet when she arrived 20 minutes later. Maya looked up from her desk, took one look at Vivian's face, and stood immediately. What happened? I'm closing the Moretti contract. What? Why? Because it was never real. Maya came around the desk. Viv, he's engaged, Maya, to someone else. Has been for 6 months. Oh my God. The whole thing was a lie. Every meeting, every conversation, every moment I thought meant something was just him playing a game I didn't know existed. Maya pulled her into a hug. Vivian stood stiff for 3 seconds. Then she collapsed, sobbed into Maya's shoulder like she was 16 instead of 38 and should have known better. I'm so stupid, she gasped between tears. You're not stupid. He's a sociopath. I let him in. I let myself believe you did nothing wrong. I fell in love with him. Maya pulled back, hands on Vivian's shoulders. Did you tell him that? No, but he knew. He saw it, and he used it anyway. Then he's worse than a sociopath. He's a monster. Vivian wiped her face with shaking hands. His mother paid me $5 million to disappear. Maya's eyes went wide. What? I took it. Good. Fuck him. Fuck his family. Take the money and let's burn his world down. Despite everything, Vivian almost smiled. I can't burn down a mafia empire, Maya. Watch me. I just want to forget he exists. Then we'll do that instead, starting now. Maya grabbed Vivian's laptop, opened her client database, and pulled up the Moretti file. Say the word and I delete everything. Vivian stared at the screen. Weeks of work, floral designs, venue concepts, the guest list they'd built together at 3 a.m. All of it fake, all of it designed to make her fall. Delete it, she whispered. Maya's finger hovered over the button. The office door slammed open. Damiano stood in the entrance, breathing hard like he'd run the whole way, flanked by 2 bodyguards who looked ready to hurt anyone who moved. Get out, Vivian said, voice dead. Not until you listen. I listened enough. Now leave before I call the police. And tell them what? That the son of a crime family hurt your feelings? The cruelty in his voice made her flinch. Maya stepped forward. Get the fuck out of this office, or I'm calling every reporter in Manhattan and telling them exactly what kind of man you are. One of the bodyguards moved. Damiano held up a hand, stopping him. 5 minutes, he said, eyes locked on Vivian. That's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask for anything anymore. Then I'm begging. The word hung in the air. Vivian looked at Maya. Give us a minute. Viv, it's fine. I'll scream if I need you. Maya glared at Damiano like she was memorizing his face for a future crime scene, then walked out, pulling the bodyguards with her. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the office. Damiano stood 3 feet from her desk, hands clenched at his sides, looking more destroyed than she'd ever seen him. I didn't tell you about Sophia because I was ending it, he said quietly. Ending what? Your engagement or your lie? Both. I don't believe you. I signed the contract 6 months ago when I thought marriage was just another business transaction. Then I met you and everything changed. How convenient. It's the truth. Your truth or the one you think I want to hear? Damiano stepped closer. Vivian stood her ground. I was going to tell you, he said. After the wedding, after you'd seen what we could build together, after you believed it was real, after you'd trapped me, after you'd chosen me. I can't choose someone who's already taken. I'm ending the engagement, the contract, all of it. Vivian laughed bitterly. You can't just end a mafia alliance because you caught feelings. Watch me. Your mother said it would start a war. My mother says a lot of things. Is she lying? Damiano's jaw tightened. His silence was answer enough. So you'll start a war, Vivian said quietly. Get people killed. destroy alliances, all because you want to prove you can have the girl and the empire. I don't want the empire. I want you. That's not a choice you get to make. Yes, it is. I'm making it right now. Vivian shook her head, tears threatening again. You're going to get people hurt, Damiano. Real people, not just your pride. I know. And you're willing to do that anyway? For you? Yes. The confession should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like drowning. I can't be the reason people die, Vivian whispered. Then what do you want me to do? Marry her. Honor the contract, stay in your world, and let me stay in mine. I can't. Why not? Because I love you. The words broke something final inside her. Don't, she whispered. Please don't say that. It's true. It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters. Vivian closed her eyes, feeling tears spill over. Love isn't enough, not when it costs lives. Then I'll find another way. There is no other way. You know it, I know it. This was doomed from the start. Damiano crossed the space between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face. Vivian's eyes flew open. I will burn my entire empire to the ground before I let you go, he said, voice raw. That's the problem. You would. And I can't let you. Vivian? She pulled away from his touch, putting the desk between them like a barrier. Take your money back. Cancel the wedding. Marry Sofia Castellano and live the life you were always supposed to live. That's not what I want. I don't care what you want anymore. The words hit him like a physical blow. Damiano stood frozen, looking at her like she'd just torn out his heart and handed it back bleeding. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. This was a fantasy, a beautiful, expensive, dangerous fantasy, but it's over now. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does, because I refuse to be the reason you destroy yourself. She picked up her phone and unblocked his number long enough to send one final message. Don't contact me again. We're done. Then she blocked him again, looked up at him standing in her office, this man who'd found every weakness in her armor and learned to live inside them, and forced herself to say the words that would end this permanently. Get out, and don't come back. Damiano stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. The wedding is still happening, he said quietly, not turning around. In Brooklyn, at 5 p.m., 4 months from now. I'll be there waiting, whether you come or not. Then he left. The door closed softly behind him. Vivian stood alone in her office, surrounded by flowers and fabric swatches and the wreckage of the most dangerous mistake she'd ever made. Maya came back in 60 seconds later. You okay? Vivian looked at her assistant, her friend, the only person who'd stayed through every disaster. Delete the file, she said, voice empty. All of it. I never want to see his name again. Maya nodded and hit the button. The Moretti wedding file disappeared. Vivian sat down heavily behind her desk and tried to remember what her life looked like before Damiano Moretti walked into it. Safe, controlled, completely alone. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. He's choosing you over the alliance. War starts in 3 days. Blood will be on your hands. Then a photo. Sofia Castellano's engagement photo. Beautiful, smiling. Completely unaware her future was being destroyed by a wedding planner she'd never met. Vivian stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she made the hardest decision of her life. She picked up her phone and called the only number that could stop what was coming. Isabella Moretti answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call. I need to talk to Sofia, Vivian said, voice shaking, face to face. Tonight. Why? Because if Damiano's going to destroy his life, I need to understand what he's destroying it for. Silence. Then Isabella's cold, measured voice. Russo's, 8 p.m., come alone. The line went dead. Vivian set her phone down and looked at Maya. I'm going back. What? Why? Because I need to know if she's worth saving. She's marrying a mobster. She's probably as bad as he is. Or she's just another person trapped in a life she didn't choose. Maya stared at her. You're going to try to fix this, aren't you? I'm going to try to stop a war. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but if I don't try and people die, I'll never forgive myself. Vivian stood, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the door. Viv, she turned. Maya's expression was somewhere between terrified and proud. Don't get killed over a man who lied to you. I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it so I can sleep at night. Then she left before Maya could argue. The city was dark when she hit the street. Somewhere across town, Damiano Moretti was probably making plans to burn his empire down. And Vivian was about to walk into enemy territory to meet the woman who could stop him. If she survived the next 4 hours, maybe she'd figure out how to survive the rest of her life. If she didn't, well, at least she'd die knowing she tried to save something instead of just planning its funeral. Russo's was different at night. The red velvet looked like dried blood under amber lighting. The empty tables felt like tombstones. Everything smelled like wine that had turned and secrets that hadn't. Vivian arrived at 7:53 p.m. wearing jeans and a sweater because armor didn't matter anymore. If tonight went badly, a suit wouldn't save her. The same wall of a bodyguard stood at the entrance. This time he searched her, patted down her coat pockets, checked her bag, took her phone and dropped it in a plastic bin like she was going through airport security in hell. She's clean, he grunted into a radio. The door buzzed open. Vivian walked through the empty dining room on legs that didn't feel steady, past the tables, past the bar where someone had left a half-empty bottle of whiskey, like evidence of earlier violence. The backroom door was closed this time. She knocked once. Come in. Not Isabella's voice. Younger, sharper, carrying an edge that suggested whoever owned it didn't ask twice. Vivian pushed the door open. Sofia Castellano sat at the same table where Isabella had destroyed her world 6 hours ago. But where Damiano's mother had looked like controlled power, Sofia looked like a weapon someone had forgotten to unload. Mid-20s. Dark hair pulled into a high ponytail that exposed sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. Red lips, black leather jacket over a white silk blouse. Rings on her fingers that looked expensive and vaguely threatening. She was beautiful the way knives were beautiful. Precise. Dangerous. Built for a specific purpose. Ms. Ashford, Sophia gestured to the chair across from her with one manicured hand. Sit. Vivian sat. 2 espressos already waited on the table. Sophia picked up hers and took a slow sip, studying Vivian over the rim exactly like Isabella had. They'd learned from the same playbook. You're prettier than your photos, Sophia said finally. I've heard that before. From Isabella? Yes. She's a bitch. Don't take it personally. The casual cruelty surprised Vivian. You're her future daughter-in-law. I'm a political pawn with good breeding and the right last name. She doesn't like me any more than she likes you. Sophia set her espresso down and leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. So, you wanted to meet me. Here I am. What do you want? Vivian forced herself to meet those sharp, dark eyes. I want to know if you love him. Sophia laughed. It was cold, hard. The kind of sound that said she'd stopped believing in love around the same time she learned to shoot. Love? Jesus, you really are a romantic. That's not an answer. No, I don't love him. I barely know him. We've had maybe 6 actual conversations and 4 of those were about territory agreements. The honesty was almost worse than a lie. Then why are you marrying him? Because my father signed a contract that says I will. And in my world, you don't break contracts. You honor them or you die trying. Vivian's chest tightened. That's not a life. It's the only life I've got. You could leave. And go where? Do what? I'm a Castellano. My last name is tattooed on my soul. There's no running from that. Sophia picked up her espresso again, fingers wrapped around the tiny cup like she needed something to hold on to. Besides, it's not a terrible arrangement. Damiano's smart, rich, not hard to look at. We'll have separate wings in whatever mansion he buys. I'll have my own life. He'll have his. We'll show up together for family dinners and public events and pretend we're happy. That sounds like prison. Welcome to organized crime. Vivian looked at this woman. This girl, really, barely in her 20s, who'd already accepted a future without love like it was inevitable. What if I told you he wants to break the contract? Sophia's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. I'd say he's stupider than I thought. He's in love with me. I know, Isabella told me. Doesn't that bother you? Why would it? I don't own his heart, just his last name and half his empire. The pragmatism was chilling. Breaking the contract will start a war, Vivian said quietly. Yep. People will die. Probably. And you're okay with that? Sophia leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Vivian's. Let me explain something to you. My father runs the Castellano territory. Damiano runs the Moretti territory. Together, they control everything from the waterfront to Midtown. Separately, they're vulnerable to the families circling like sharks waiting for weakness. She picked up a knife from the table and spun it slowly. This marriage isn't about love, it's about survival. It's about making sure my little sister grows up safe. It's about keeping my father's empire intact so he doesn't get murdered in his sleep by ambitious underbosses who think they can do better. The knife stopped spinning. Sophia pointed it at Vivian. So yeah, I'm okay with whatever it takes to keep my family alive, even if that means marrying a man who loves someone else. Vivian stared at the knife, pulse racing. Put that down. Why? Scared? No, just tired of being threatened. Sophia smiled. Then she set the knife down and pushed it toward Vivian. Your turn. Tell me why you're really here. Vivian looked at the knife sitting between them. I need to know if there's another way. Something that doesn't end in blood. There isn't. There has to be. There isn't. My father wants this alliance. Isabella wants this alliance. Every family with a stake in this territory wants stability. And stability means marriage. What do you want? The question seemed to surprise Sophia. She sat back, studying Vivian like she was a puzzle that didn't fit the picture. What I want doesn't matter. It should. Welcome to being a woman in a world run by violent men. Vivian felt something crack inside her chest, because she recognized that exhaustion, that resignation, that quiet acceptance that your life belonged to everyone except yourself. She'd felt exactly the same way for 12 years. What if we could change it? Vivian said quietly. Change what? The terms, the contract, the whole thing. Sophia's eyes narrowed. How? I don't know yet, but there has to be a way to give everyone what they need without destroying what we want. You sound like a wedding planner. I'm a wedding planner. I solve impossible problems for a living. This isn't flowers and seating charts. I know, but the principle is the same. Find out what everyone actually needs. Build something that gives them that. Compromise on everything else. Sophia stared at her for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Real laughter this time. Not cold or bitter, just genuine amusement at the absurdity. You're actually serious. Yes. You think you can negotiate a peace treaty between mafia families like you're mediating a venue dispute. I've done harder. I doubt that. Vivian leaned forward. Your father wants stability. Isabella wants control. What do you want? Sophia's laughter died. Her expression went carefully blank. I told you, what I want doesn't... Bullshit. Everyone wants something, even you. Silence filled the room. Sophia's jaw tightened. Then she said so quietly, Vivian almost missed it. I want out. Out of what? All of it. The family. The business. The life where I'm currency instead of a person. Vivian's breath caught. Then help me find a way. There is no way. There's always a way. We just have to be smart enough to find it. Sophia shook her head. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. The backroom door opened. Isabella walked in, flanked by 2 bodyguards, looking at Vivian like she was an infection that needed removing. Enough, she said coldly. This meeting is over. Vivian stood. We're not done. Yes, you are. Isabella's voice could have cut glass. Sophia, go wait in the car. Sophia glanced at Vivian. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or just recognition that they were both trapped in the same cage wearing different chains. Then Sophia stood and walked out without a word. The door closed. Isabella moved to the table and poured herself an espresso from a carafe Vivian hadn't noticed. You're persistent. I'll give you that. I'm trying to stop a war. By convincing my son's fiancée to abandon her family obligations? Ambitious. By finding a solution that doesn't require anyone to die. Isabella took a slow sip, eyes never leaving Vivian's. There is no solution. Damiano will marry Sophia or the alliance falls apart. Those are the only options. What if there was a third option? There isn't. You haven't even heard it yet. I don't need to. I've been negotiating treaties since before you were born. I know every angle, every loophole, every possible compromise, and none of them work. Vivian's hands clenched at her sides. Then let me try. Why? What's in it for you? Nothing. I just don't want blood on my hands. Too late. The moment you walked into my son's life, you put blood on both your hands. The words hit like a slap. That's not fair. Fair? Isabella's laugh was sharp. You want fair? Sofia Castellano is 24 years old. She spent her entire life being groomed for this marriage, being told her value exists in her bloodline and her ability to produce heirs, and you're going to take that away from her because you fell in love with a man you've known for 3 weeks? She doesn't want this marriage. What she wants is irrelevant. What her family needs is survival. And you're threatening that. Vivian stepped closer to the table. I'm offering an alternative. There is no alternative. Let me talk to the families, all of them. Let me present a different arrangement. Absolutely not. Why? Because you're a civilian. You don't understand how this world works. Then teach me. Isabella's expression shifted. Something almost like respect flickered across her face. You really think you can solve this, don't you? I have to try. Even if it costs you everything? Yes. Isabella set her espresso down and studied Vivian like she was appraising a piece of art. All right, I'll give you one chance. One meeting, tomorrow night. You'll present your solution to both families, and if they don't like it, you walk away permanently. No more contact with Damiano. No more interference. You disappear and let this play out the way it was always meant to. Vivian's heart hammered. And if they agree? Then you'll have done the impossible, but I wouldn't count on it. I'll take those odds. Isabella smiled coldly. Brave, stupid, but brave. She pulled out her phone and typed something. Vivian's confiscated phone buzzed in the plastic bin by the door. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Location will be sent 1 hour before. Come alone. Bring your solution, and pray it's good enough to keep you alive. Isabella walked past her toward the door, paused. One more thing, Ms. Ashford. Vivian turned. If your plan fails, Damiano will still try to break the contract. And when he does, I will personally make sure you understand exactly what that costs. Do you understand? Vivian's throat went dry. Yes. Good. Isabella left. Vivian stood alone in the back room of Russo's, legs shaking, heart racing, brain screaming that she'd just agreed to something that would probably get her killed. She grabbed her phone from the bin. 17 missed calls from Damiano, 23 texts. She opened the most recent one. Please tell me you're okay. Please. Then, my mother said you met with Sophia. What did you do? Then, Vivian, answer me or I'm coming to your apartment. She typed back with shaking fingers. I'm fine. I'm fixing this. Don't contact me until tomorrow night. His response came in 3 seconds. What did you do? What I had to. Vivian. She turned off her phone before he could finish. Then she walked out of Russo's into the freezing New York night and tried to figure out how the hell she was going to negotiate peace between mafia families when she couldn't even negotiate her own heart. 24 hours to build a miracle. Vivian didn't sleep. Spent the entire night in her office surrounded by notebooks, laptops, and diagrams that looked like battle plans because that's exactly what they were. Maya found her at 6 a.m. still wearing yesterday's clothes, surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled paper. Please tell me you didn't agree to something insane. I agreed to present a solution to both families tonight. That's insane. I know. They're going to kill you. Maybe. Viv, I have to try, Maya. If I don't and people die, I'll never forgive myself. Maya sat down across from her, looking exhausted. What's your plan? Vivian pushed a legal pad toward her. Maya read it slowly. Her expression went from confused to shocked to something close to impressed. This is actually brilliant. Or completely stupid. Both, definitely both. Maya looked up. Does Damiano know? No. Are you going to tell him? Not until after the meeting. He's going to lose his mind. Probably. You're okay with that? Vivian looked at the plan spread across her desk. Hours of work, hours of thinking through every angle, every possible objection, every way this could go wrong. I'm okay with knowing I tried everything before watching the world burn. Maya reached across the desk and grabbed her hand. Don't die tonight. I'll do my best. That's not good enough. It's all I've got. Maya squeezed her hand once, then let go. I'm coming with you. No. Yes. You're not walking into a mafia meeting alone. Maya, I didn't ask. I'm coming. End of discussion. Vivian wanted to argue, but the truth was she didn't want to face this alone. Fine, but you stay in the car. Deal. They spent the rest of the day refining the plan, making calls, confirming details, building a presentation that would either save everyone or get them both killed. At 7 p.m., Vivian's phone buzzed with an address. A warehouse in Red Hook. Of course it was a warehouse. Every terrible decision happened in warehouses. Vivian changed into black pants, a white blouse, and boots that could run if needed. Pulled her hair back. No jewelry. No makeup beyond what made her look competent instead of terrified. Maya drove. They crossed the Brooklyn Bridge in silence, watching Manhattan burn gold behind them like a city on fire. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside. Rusted metal. Broken windows. The kind of building where bodies turned up and nobody asked questions. But the door was unlocked. And inside, everything changed. The warehouse had been converted into something that looked like a boardroom designed by people who valued privacy over comfort. Long table, 20 chairs, armed guards standing at every corner like statues that could kill you. Both families were already there. Isabella sat at one end of the table, flanked by men in expensive suits who radiated controlled violence. At the other end sat a man who had to be Sophia's father, older, gray hair, face like carved stone. The kind of man who'd seen too much death to be impressed by threats. Sophia sat beside him, looking small and sharp and trapped. And Damiano. He stood near the windows, arms crossed, jaw tight, looking at Vivian like she'd just walked into enemy fire. Their eyes met. She saw fury, fear, desperation. She looked away before it could break her. Ms. Ashford, Isabella's voice cut through the silence. You wanted this meeting. You have 15 minutes. Make them count. Vivian walked to the head of the table, set down her folder, looked at every single person in this room who could decide whether she lived or died. Then she started talking. You want stability? You want peace. You want an alliance that protects both families from external threats while maintaining internal control. The current solution is marriage between Damiano Moretti and Sofia Castellano. She paused. But that solution requires two people to sacrifice their lives for an empire they didn't choose, and history shows that forced alliances built on resentment eventually collapse. Get to the point, Sophia's father growled. The point is there's another way. A business merger without the marriage. A treaty that gives both families what they need without destroying what your children want. She opened the folder and pulled out contracts she'd spent all night drafting. Joint territory management, shared profit margins, combined security infrastructure, every advantage of marriage without the personal sacrifice. Isabella's expression didn't change. And why would we agree to this when marriage provides insurance that business contracts don't? Because business contracts are legally binding and backed by resources both families value. Marriage is an emotional gamble that only works if both people are invested. Force it, and you get rebellion. Give them choice, and you get loyalty. Loyalty from who? Sophia's father demanded. Your boyfriend? Loyalty from two families who chose partnership instead of having it forced on them. Vivian pulled out more documents, financial projections, territory maps, security assessments, everything she'd built in 24 hours with help from Maya and 3 lawyers who specialized in corporate mergers and didn't ask why a wedding planner needed their expertise. This gives you everything marriage would give you: stability, control, shared resources. The only thing it doesn't give you is the illusion that your children's happiness is worth less than your power. Silence. Someone at the far end of the table laughed darkly. You've got balls, I'll give you that. Vivian kept her eyes on Isabella. Do we have a deal? No. The word fell like an axe. Why not? Because marriage is symbolic. It tells the world these families are united by blood. Your contracts tell the world we're business partners who can dissolve the agreement whenever convenient. Then we add a dissolution clause that makes breaking the contract as devastating as divorce. Financial penalties, territory forfeitures, whatever makes it permanent enough to matter. Isabella stood slowly. You're asking us to trust paperwork over legacy. I'm asking you to value your children over tradition. That's not how this world works. Then change it. The challenge hung in the air. Damiano moved away from the windows. She's right. Every eye turned toward him. The marriage was always strategy, never love. If we can achieve the same result without forcing Sophia into a life she doesn't want, why wouldn't we try? Because it sets a precedent, Isabella said coldly. It tells every other family that the Morettis value emotion over duty. It tells them we value smart strategy over outdated tradition. Sophia's father stood now too. And what does my daughter get out of this? Freedom to what? Marry whoever she wants? Build a normal life? She's a Castellano. Normal doesn't exist for her. Sophia's voice cut through the room, sharp and clear. I want out. Her father turned slowly. What? You heard me. I want out of the family, the business, all of it. Sophia, I've spent 24 years being groomed for this marriage like I'm livestock. I'm done. If this wedding gets canceled, I'm taking my trust fund and disappearing. You'll never see me again. The threat landed like a bomb. Her father's face went red. You ungrateful! Careful. Damiano's voice was quiet but carried weight. She's making a choice. Same one you're asking me not to make. Sophia's father looked between them, then at Isabella. Then at Vivian's contract spread across the table. This is insane. Maybe, Vivian said. But it's also the only solution that doesn't end in war or resentment. More silence. Guards shifted positions. Someone coughed. Isabella picked up the contract and read it slowly. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, she set it down. I want modifications, more financial safeguards, stricter territory divisions, and a clause that says if either family violates the terms, the other gets full control of disputed assets. Vivian's heart hammered. Agreed. And Sophia still joins the Moretti family. What? Sophia's voice cracked. Not through marriage, through business. You'll run the joint territory operations. Prove you're worth more than your last name. Sophia stared at Isabella like she'd just been offered freedom wrapped in a different cage, but her father was nodding slowly. She's smart, ruthless when she needs to be. Could work. Do I get a say in this? Sophia demanded. No, both parents said simultaneously. Sophia looked at Vivian, something desperate in her eyes. Vivian looked back at Isabella. She gets full autonomy, no interference, no forced decisions. She runs the operation her way, or the deal's off. Isabella's eyes narrowed. You're not in a position to make demands. Yes, I am. Because without this deal, Damiano breaks the engagement anyway, and you get war instead of peace. The truth hung heavy. Isabella looked at her son. Damiano looked back, expression unreadable. She's right, he said quietly. I'm not marrying Sophia, with or without this deal. At least this way you get something out of it. Isabella's jaw tightened. Then she looked at Sophia's father. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Isabella picked up a pen. We'll review the terms, modify as needed, reconvene in 3 days with final contracts. And the engagement? Vivian asked, voice shaking. Suspended pending final agreement. Not canceled, suspended. But it was enough. Vivian's knees almost gave out. She'd done it, actually done it, built a solution that might actually save everyone. Meeting adjourned, Isabella said coldly. People started standing. Guards moved. The room began emptying. Vivian grabbed her folder with shaking hands. Damiano was beside her before she could take 2 steps. What the hell did you just do? Saved your life. By negotiating with my mother behind my back? By finding the only solution that didn't end in blood. His hands grabbed her arms, not rough but desperate. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. You went into a meeting with both families, and I won. You gambled everything. For you. The words came out before she could stop them. I gambled everything for you. Damiano's expression crumbled. He pulled her against his chest, arms wrapping around her like she was the only thing keeping him standing. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered into her hair. "I can't promise that." "Vivian?" She pulled back enough to look at him. "This doesn't fix us." "I know." "You still lied to me." "I know." "I still don't trust you." "I'll earn it back, however long it takes." Vivian wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into his arms and pretend the last 48 hours hadn't happened. But she couldn't. Not yet. "The wedding," she said quietly. "Is it still happening?" Damiano's eyes searched hers. "Do you want it to?" "I don't know." "Then I'll wait until you do." He released her slowly, like letting go hurt. Vivian stepped back, putting distance between them before she could change her mind. "I need time." "How much?" "I don't know. Maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe forever?" The word broke something. "Maybe." Damiano nodded once. Then he turned and walked toward his mother without looking back. Vivian stood alone in the warehouse, feeling like she'd just survived a war, but lost the battle that mattered most. Maya appeared at her elbow. "You did it." "Yeah." "So why do you look like someone died?" "Because I'm not sure I saved the right thing." Maya pulled her toward the exit. "Come on, let's get you home before you collapse." They walked out of the warehouse into Brooklyn night. Behind them, both families were already arguing over contract modifications. Ahead, Manhattan glowed across the water like a promise Vivian didn't know if she could keep. Her phone buzzed, a text from Damiano. "Brooklyn rooftop, 5 p.m. 3 months from now, I'll be there, whether you come or not." Vivian stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she turned off her phone and got in Maya's car. She'd saved his life, saved the alliance, saved everyone except herself. Now she just had to figure out if that was enough, or if she'd spend the rest of her life planning other people's weddings while the most dangerous man in New York waited alone at an altar she'd designed for dreams she didn't know how to believe in anymore. 3 months felt like 3 years. Vivian spent them rebuilding the life she'd almost destroyed for a man who turned her world sideways and left her standing in the wreckage trying to remember what stable ground felt like. She took on new clients, big ones, a tech billionaire wedding in the Hamptons, a fashion heiress ceremony in the Catskills, events that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied with other people's love stories instead of her own. Maya watched her carefully during those months, like she was waiting for Vivian to crack. But Vivian didn't crack. She just worked, planned, executed, became the version of herself she'd been before Damiano Moretti walked into her office carrying danger like expensive cologne and promises wrapped in manipulation. The contracts between the Moretti and Castellano families were finalized after 6 weeks of brutal negotiations. Vivian wasn't present for the final signing. Isabella sent her a single text when it was done. "Your solution worked. Don't make me regret it. No thank you. No acknowledgement that Vivian had prevented a war. Just a warning wrapped in words." Sophia took over the joint territory operations exactly like Isabella demanded. Vivian saw her once, 3 weeks after the warehouse meeting, at a coffee shop in Soho. They didn't speak, just made eye contact across the room. Sophia raised her cup in a small salute. Vivian nodded back. 2 women who'd survived the same cage wearing different scars. Damiano kept his distance. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits to her office. Just silence that felt louder than anything he'd ever said. Until exactly 2 weeks before the date he'd promised to wait. Vivian woke up on a Tuesday morning to find a cream envelope slid under her apartment door. Her hand shook when she picked it up. Inside was a single invitation printed on thick paper that felt expensive and final. "You are invited to witness a wedding. Brooklyn rooftop. Red Hook. April 28th, 5 p.m., white peonies, golden ranunculus. Champagne and promises. Everything you designed for yourself. Whether you come as the guest or the bride is your choice." Vivian sat on her apartment floor holding the invitation, tears streaming down her face, finally letting herself feel everything she'd been avoiding for 3 months. She loved him, despite the lies, despite the manipulation, despite everything that should have made her run. She loved Damiano Moretti with a fierceness that terrified her. But love wasn't enough. Not when it was built on secrets and strategy instead of truth. Her phone buzzed, a text from Maya. "Did you get it?" "Yes." What are you going to do? Vivian stared at the invitation until the words blurred. I don't know. She spent the next 13 days trying to decide, made pro and con lists that didn't help, talked to Maya until they both got tired of analyzing the same impossible choice, walked past the warehouse in Red Hook twice just to see if it felt like destiny or disaster. It felt like both. On the morning of April 28th, Vivian woke up at sunrise with no idea what she was going to do. She went through her normal routine. Coffee at 7:15, shower, hair pulled back. Professional clothes that felt like armor against her own heart. Maya showed up at her apartment at noon carrying takeout and determination. Eat, she ordered, shoving a container of pad thai into Vivian's hands. I'm not hungry. I don't care. Eat anyway. Vivian ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Maya sat across from her at the tiny kitchen table, studying her like a problem that needed solving. You're going, she said finally. I haven't decided yet. Yes, you have. You're just scared to admit it. Vivian set her fork down. What if I go and it's a mistake? What if you don't go and spend the rest of your life wondering? That's not helpful. It's honest. Vivian looked at her friend, this woman who'd stayed through every disaster and somehow still believed Vivian deserved beautiful things. I don't know how to trust him again. Then don't. Trust yourself instead. What does that mean? Maya leaned forward. It means you go to that rooftop because you need to see what he built. Not for him, for you. And then you decide if the man waiting at that altar is worth the risk of breaking again. Vivian's throat tightened. And if he's not? Then you walk away knowing you tried everything. No regrets, no what-ifs, just closure. The word settled heavy in Vivian's chest. Closure. Maybe that's all she needed. One final moment to say goodbye to the dream she'd spent 12 years running from. Okay, she whispered. Okay, you're going? Okay, I'm going. Maya smiled. Good, because I already picked out your dress. The dress was ivory silk that moved like water. Simple, elegant. Nothing like a traditional wedding gown, but everything like something Vivian would have chosen for herself if she'd ever believed she deserved to be a bride. Maya helped her into it at 4:15 p.m., fingers steady on the zipper while Vivian's hands shook. You look beautiful, Maya said softly. I look terrified. That too. Vivian stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone she barely recognized. Softer, more vulnerable. The version of herself she'd buried under 12 years of professional armor and emotional walls. What if this is the stupidest thing I've ever done? Then at least you'll have a good story. Despite everything, Vivian laughed. Maya handed her a small bouquet. White peonies and golden ranunculus wrapped in cream silk ribbon. Where did you get this? Damiano sent it this morning, with instructions that I was only supposed to give it to you if you actually decided to go. Vivian held the bouquet like it might explode. He knew I'd come. Or he hoped. There's a difference. The flowers smelled like spring and possibilities Vivian didn't know how to believe in. Maya called a car at 4:30. They rode to Brooklyn in silence, watching Manhattan disappear behind them like a city they were leaving behind. The warehouse looked different in daylight, less threatening, almost beautiful in the golden late afternoon sun. The car stopped a block away. Maya squeezed Vivian's hand. You want me to come with you? No, this is something I have to do alone. You sure? Vivian looked at the warehouse, at the rooftop barely visible above the industrial skyline. I'm not sure about anything, but I'm going anyway. She stepped out of the car on shaking legs, bouquet clutched in both hands. Maya's voice followed her through the open window. If you need an exit, text me. I'll be waiting. Vivian nodded without turning around. Then she walked toward the warehouse like she was walking toward the edge of everything she'd ever known. The door was unlocked. Inside, the industrial space had been transformed. White fabric draped from the ceiling like clouds. Candles lined the pathway in glass votives that caught the light. Amber bulbs hung overhead, not lit yet, but ready for sunset. And at the far end, stairs leading up. Vivian climbed slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The rooftop door was propped open with a stone painted gold. She pushed through and stopped breathing. The rooftop had become the exact wedding she'd designed for herself 13 years ago. White peonies and golden ranunculus covered every surface in living installations that looked like the space was blooming. String lights hung overhead, ready for evening. A simple arch stood at the far end overlooking Manhattan, wrapped in flowers and silk. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers, the same songs she'd chosen, the same ones that felt like memories. And standing at the altar, hands in his pockets, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, Damiano Moretti. He wore a black suit with no tie, hair swept back, dark eyes carrying something that looked like hope and terror in equal measure. No bodyguards, no family, no witnesses, just him and her and the space between them that felt like miles. Vivian walked forward slowly, legs barely holding her, stopped 3 feet from the altar. "You came," Damiano said quietly. "I almost didn't. But you did. I needed to see it. What you built." "And?" Vivian looked around at the perfection surrounding them. Every detail exactly like her sketches. Every flower placed with care. Every element chosen because it mattered to her, not because it looked expensive. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's yours. Everything you designed. Everything you wanted." "Why?" Damiano stepped closer. Not touching her, just close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The shadows that said he'd spent 3 months sleeping as badly as she had. "Because I needed to prove I meant every word, that this wasn't manipulation or strategy, that I really do love you enough to build the impossible and wait to see if you'd choose it." Vivian's vision blurred. "You lied to me." "I know. You manipulated me. I know. You made me fall in love with you while hiding the fact that you belonged to someone else." Damiano's jaw tightened. "I didn't belong to her. The contract belonged to both families. My heart was always yours." "That's not good enough." "I know that too." Silence filled the rooftop. The city glowed golden in the distance. Exactly 5 p.m., exactly like she'd always imagined. "I don't know how to trust you again," Vivian said, tears falling freely now. "Then don't. Not yet. Just stay. Let me prove I'm worth the risk." "For how long?" "However long it takes. That could be years. I have years. I might never forgive you. I'll take that chance." Vivian looked at him, this dangerous man who'd found every crack in her armor and learned to live inside them, and saw something she hadn't expected. Patience. He wasn't demanding, wasn't pushing, just waiting for her to decide if the man standing before her was worth the leap. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "So am I. What if we destroy each other? What if we don't?" The question hung between them. Vivian looked at the altar, at the flowers, at the city burning gold across the water, at everything she'd spent 12 years convincing herself she didn't deserve. Then she looked back at Damiano and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you have the rings?" His breath caught. "What?" "The rings. Do you have them?" Damiano reached into his pocket with shaking hands and pulled out a small velvet box, opened it. 2 platinum bands sat inside. Simple, elegant, engraved with something she couldn't read from this distance. "What does it say?" He pulled out the smaller ring and held it up to the light. "You deserved beautiful things all along." Vivian's hand flew to her mouth, a sob breaking free. "And yours?" Damiano showed her the second band. "You taught me beautiful things were worth the fear." The words broke something final inside her. All the walls she'd built, all the protection, all the careful distance she'd maintained for 3 months, it crumbled into dust. "I'm still angry at you," she said through tears. "I know. I don't trust you yet. I know. This might be the stupidest decision I've ever made." "Probably." Vivian looked at the ring in his hand, at the man holding it, at the life he was offering that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Then she held out her left hand. Damiano went very still. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that shook almost as badly as hers. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably measured her finger while she slept on his couch 3 months ago. The thought should have made her angry. Instead, it made her laugh through her tears. "What?" Damiano asked, almost smiling. "You're still manipulating me, just in subtler ways." "Is it working?" "Unfortunately." Vivian picked up his ring and held it between them. "If I do this, things change. No more lies, no more secrets. You tell me everything or we're done." "Agreed." "I mean it, Damiano. One more betrayal and I walk away permanently." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I've already survived one broken engagement. I won't survive another." Damiano's hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears. "I will spend every single day for the rest of my life proving you can trust me, even on the days you don't believe it, even on the days you want to leave. I'll prove it until you finally let yourself believe it's real." Vivian stared into his dark eyes and saw the truth there. Not perfection, not promises that nothing would ever go wrong. Just raw, honest commitment to trying. And maybe that was enough. She slid the ring onto his finger, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it twice. When it was finally in place, she whispered, "I love you, but I'm still furious." Damiano's smile was soft and real and the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "I'll take it." Then he kissed her. Soft at first, gentle, like he was afraid she'd change her mind. But Vivian kissed him back harder, hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer until there was no space between them. The kiss tasted like tears and champagne and 3 months of missing someone she'd tried so hard to forget. When they finally broke apart, the sun was setting, turning Manhattan into liquid gold across the water. Damiano rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. "We should probably make this official," he murmured. "How?" He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. A voice came through the speaker, older, formal. "Are we ready to proceed?" Vivian pulled back. "Who is that?" "Justice of the peace. He's been waiting downstairs for an hour in case you actually showed up. You had a backup plan." "I always have a backup plan." Despite everything, Vivian laughed. "You're impossible. And you loved me anyway." "Unfortunately," Damiano called down to the justice. "We're ready." The door opened 2 minutes later. An older man in a simple suit walked onto the rooftop carrying a leather book and looking completely unfazed by the unconventional ceremony. "Ms. Ashford, Mr. Moretti, shall we begin?" They stood before him at the altar as the city turned gold and the lights overhead began to glow. No guests, no family, no one except the two of them and a man who'd probably married stranger couples in stranger places. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows with no modifications, no grand speeches, just the essential words that turned two people into something permanent. When the justice asked if Vivian took Damiano as her husband, she hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Not because she was unsure, but because she needed to feel the weight of the choice. Then she said, voice steady, "I do." When Damiano said the same words back, his voice cracked on the second word. The justice pronounced them married at exactly 5:47 p.m. while Manhattan burned behind them. Damiano kissed her like he was terrified she'd disappear if he stopped. Vivian kissed him back like she was finally letting herself believe in beautiful things again. When they broke apart, the justice was already gone, disappeared as quietly as he'd arrived. They stood alone on the rooftop, married, terrified, holding on to each other like anchors in a storm that might never fully pass. "We're insane," Vivian whispered. "Completely. This could still fall apart. It could. I might wake up tomorrow and regret this." "You might." She looked up at him, this man who destroyed and rebuilt her world in the same breath. "But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing you." Damiano's arms tightened around her. "That's all I needed to hear." They stayed on that rooftop until the stars came out, dancing to jazz that played from hidden speakers, drinking champagne someone had left in a bucket of ice, talking about everything except the future because the present was already more than either of them knew how to handle. Around 9 p.m., Vivian's phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Please tell me you're alive." Vivian typed back with one hand, the other still holding Damiano. "I'm alive. I'm married. I'm terrified. I'm happy." Maya's response came immediately. "In that order?" "In that order. Good. I'll kill him if he hurts you again. I know. That's why I said yes." Vivian pocketed her phone and looked at her new husband standing beside her in the dark, city lights reflecting in his eyes. Maya says she'll kill you if you hurt me again. I believe her. You should. Damiano pulled her closer, hands warm against her back. I have no intention of giving her the opportunity. Good. Because she's terrifying when she's protective. Almost as terrifying as you. Vivian smiled against his chest. I'm not terrifying. You negotiated peace between mafia families. You're absolutely terrifying. I was just trying to stop a war. You did more than that. You proved that love could be stronger than legacy. Vivian pulled back enough to look at him. Did I? You're standing here, aren't you? After everything I did, everything I hid. You still chose me. I chose the possibility of us. The reality is still being written. Then we'll write it together. The promise settled between them, fragile and real. They left the rooftop around midnight, taking the flowers with them because Vivian refused to leave anything that beautiful behind. Damiano's driver waited outside. No bodyguards this time, just a quiet man who'd clearly been instructed to be invisible. They rode back to Manhattan in silence, hands intertwined, watching Brooklyn disappear behind them. Where are we going? Vivian asked. Where do you want to go? I don't know. I didn't plan past the ceremony. Neither did I. They looked at each other and laughed. Two professional planners who'd somehow forgotten to plan their own wedding night. Your place or mine? Damiano asked. Yours. Mine's too small for both of us and all these flowers. They ended up in Damiano's penthouse overlooking Central Park, surrounded by white peonies and golden ranunculus that made the modern space feel like a garden. Vivian stood by the windows looking out at the city, still wearing the ivory dress, platinum ring catching the light. Damiano came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. Regrets yet? Ask me in the morning. Fair? They stood like that for a long time, just breathing together, learning how to exist as something new. I meant what I said earlier, Vivian said quietly, about being angry. I know. It's going to take time for me to fully trust you again. I know that too. There will be days I want to leave. Then I'll give you space and wait for you to come back. And if I don't come back, Damiano's arms tightened slightly. Then I'll know I failed. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserved, instead of the one who destroyed you. Vivian turned in his arms to face him. You didn't destroy me. You just broke through walls I didn't know I'd built. Is that better or worse? I'm still deciding. She kissed him softly, hands sliding up to cup his face. When she pulled back, she whispered against his mouth, but I think it might be better. They made love slowly that night, learning each other without urgency, building something real out of the wreckage of manipulation and lies. And when Vivian finally fell asleep in Damiano's arms around 3 a.m., she dreamed of white peonies and golden ranunculus growing in places that used to be empty. She woke up at sunrise to find Damiano already awake, watching her like he was afraid she'd been a dream. Morning, she whispered. Morning. How do you feel? Vivian took inventory. Her body felt sore in good ways. Her heart felt tender, but not broken. Her mind felt clearer than it had in months. Terrified, she admitted. But okay. Good terrified or bad terrified? The kind where you jump off a cliff and hope you can fly. Damiano smiled. And can you? Vivian looked at the ring on her finger, at the man beside her, at the life they'd just promised to build together. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. They spent the morning in bed talking about everything they'd avoided for 3 months. The lies, the hurt, the fear, the impossible choice they'd both made to try anyway. Around noon, Damiano's phone rang. Isabella. He looked at Vivian. I should probably tell her. That we got married? Yeah. How do you think she'll react? Violently. But she'll get over it. Damiano answered on speaker. Mother. Damiano, we need to discuss the quarterly territory reports. I got married last night. Silence. Then Isabella's cold voice. To whom? To Vivian. More silence. Vivian held her breath. Finally, I told you she'd be trouble. You did. And you married her anyway. I did. You're an idiot. Probably. But you're my idiot. Congratulations. Don't make me regret approving those contracts. The line went dead. Damiano looked at Vivian. That went better than expected. She called you an idiot. She calls me that weekly. This time it was almost affectionate. Vivian laughed despite herself. Her phone rang next. Maya. She answered without hesitation. I'm still alive. And married, according to your text last night. And married. Jesus, Viv. I know. Are you happy? Vivian looked at Damiano lying beside her, morning light making his dark eyes look almost soft. I'm terrified and happy. Is that possible? For you? Always. They talked for another 10 minutes before Maya made Vivian promise to come by the office tomorrow and explain everything in excruciating detail. When Vivian hung up, Damiano pulled her back against his chest. So, we're married. We are. What do we do now? Vivian thought about it, about the business she'd built, the life she'd carefully constructed, the walls she'd spent 12 years maintaining. We figure it out as we go. That's not very organized for a wedding planner. Good thing I'm not planning this anymore. I'm living it. Damiano kissed the top of her head. For what it's worth, I think you're doing great. Ask me again in a year. I will. And the year after that. And the one after that. The promise settled warm in Vivian's chest. They spent the rest of the day figuring out logistics, moving some of Vivian's things into the penthouse, calling lawyers about name changes and paperwork, doing all the mundane things that turned a spontaneous wedding into actual marriage. That night, they ordered takeout and ate it on the floor surrounded by boxes and flowers that were starting to wilt, but still smelled like hope. I have a question, Vivian said around a mouthful of lo mein. What? The folder, the one with all my old designs. Where did you actually get it? Damiano set down his chopsticks. Your storage unit. You keep one in Queens under a fake name. I had someone retrieve it. That's breaking and entering. It's research. It's illegal. Welcome to my world. Vivian should have been angry. Instead, she just shook her head, almost smiling. You're impossible. And you married me anyway. I did. She paused. Why? Why did I break into your storage unit, or why did you marry me? Both. Damiano reached for her hand, thumb tracing the ring he'd placed there 24 hours ago. I broke into your storage unit because I needed to understand who you were before the world broke you. And I found sketches of a wedding so beautiful it hurt to look at. Plans for a life you'd convinced yourself you didn't deserve. And I knew right then that I'd spend whatever time I had proving you wrong. Vivian's throat tightened. And me? Why did I marry you? I'm still trying to figure that out. She set down her own food and moved to sit in his lap, arms wrapping around his neck. I married you because somewhere between the manipulation and the lies and the impossible situation, you made me remember what it felt like to want something for myself. Not for clients, not for business, for me. Even though I lied? Even though you lied? Because the beautiful things you built were real, even if the circumstances weren't. Damiano's arms tightened around her. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this. You can't promise that. Watch me. Vivian kissed him, tasting lo mein and promises and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, beautiful things could last if you built them strong enough. They fell asleep that night surrounded by half-empty takeout containers and wilting flowers and the quiet knowledge that they'd survived the impossible. Now they just had to figure out how to survive the rest. 6 months later, Vivian stood in her office looking at a cream envelope that had just arrived. No return address. Same expensive stationery as before. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a single card. Thank you for saving my life. I'm in Milan now, running my own gallery. Free. Turns out you were right. Some cages you can escape if you're willing to lose everything. See, Vivian smiled and tucked the card in her desk drawer next to the original contract Damiano had sent. Evidence that sometimes impossible problems had solutions if you were brave enough to find them. Her phone buzzed. Damiano, dinner at 7? I have something to show you. What? You'll see. Wear something nice. That's not suspicious at all. Trust me. Vivian stared at those two words. 6 months ago, they would have made her panic. Now they just made her curious. Fine. See you at 7. She showed up at his penthouse at exactly 7 p.m. wearing a black dress and the platinum ring that still felt new. Damiano waited by the windows wearing a suit with no tie, looking at her the same way he had on their wedding night, like she was the only impossible problem he'd ever wanted to solve. Close your eyes, he said. Why? Because I'm about to prove I can still surprise you in ways that don't involve breaking and entering. Despite herself, Vivian laughed and closed her eyes. She felt him take her hand, leading her through the penthouse toward what felt like the office. Okay, open. Vivian opened her eyes. The office had been converted into something that looked like a professional design studio. Drafting tables, fabric swatches, lighting samples, everything she'd need to plan weddings from home. What is this? Your new workspace. I know you love your office in Midtown, but I thought maybe you'd want the option to work from here sometimes, especially when... He stopped. Vivian turned to look at him. Especially when what? Damiano's hand moved to rest on her still flat stomach. Especially when you're 6 months pregnant and don't feel like commuting. Vivian's breath stopped. How did you... I noticed things. You stopped drinking wine 3 weeks ago. You've been nauseous in the mornings, and you've been looking at the guest room like you're planning something. Tears blurred her vision. I was going to tell you tonight. I know. I just wanted to tell you first that I already know. And I'm terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared. Vivian laughed through tears. So business as usual. Exactly. She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. We're having a baby. We are. This is insane. Completely. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be a father. We'll figure it out together. Vivian pulled back to look at him, mascara probably running, emotions everywhere. Like we've figured out everything else? Exactly like that, terrified and hopeful and making it up as we go. She kissed him hard, hands tangling in his hair, letting herself feel the full weight of what they'd built. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And theirs. And worth every terrifying choice that led them here. When they finally broke apart, Damiano whispered against her mouth, I love you. Even on the days you're still angry. I love you too. Even on the days I don't trust you. Fair. They stood in the converted office overlooking Central Park, holding each other like anchors, building a future neither of them had planned, but both of them chose anyway. And somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with other people's stories. Other weddings Vivian would plan, other impossible problems she'd solve, other lives she'd help build while growing her own. But tonight, she just stood in her husband's arms and let herself believe that sometimes, if you built beautiful things strong enough and chose them brave enough, they could survive anything. Even the fear that tried to destroy them. Even the lies that almost broke them. Even the impossible odds that said love like theirs shouldn't work. Because Vivian Moretti, née Ashford, had spent 12 years planning other people's happy endings. Now she was finally living her own, and it was messy, complicated, built on manipulation that turned into truth and fear that turned into courage. But it was hers, and that made it perfect.